Sorry, sweetheart, this table's for family only. My mother smirked as she pointed me to a fold-out chair by the trash can. Everyone laughed. But when the $4,600 bill came and the waiter looked at me, I smiled and said, "Not my table." That night, everything changed forever. The maitre d' smiled as he pulled out the velvet-lined chairs one by one for my family, each seat facing a candlelit table adorned with crystal glasses and gold-trimmed menus. It was the kind of restaurant you only visited once a year, if that. And this year it was for my mom's birthday. Everyone was dressed to impress. My brothers in tailored suits, my sister in her designer dress. I had saved up for weeks to buy a simple black outfit and heels just for this night. I walked in a little late, just 5 minutes, and smiled, scanning for a seat. My mom's eyes met mine. Cold. Calculated. With a smug twist of her lips, she motioned behind her. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, loudly enough for the whole room to hear. "This table's for family only." I blinked. Confused. She pointed to a lonely fold-out chair. One of those cheap, creaky metal things. It sat awkwardly beside a service station, right next to the swinging kitchen door and a trash bin. Laughter bubbled from my siblings. My aunt covered her mouth like she was trying to hide a giggle. My dad didn't even look up. I stood there for a second, heart pounding, face burning, waiting for someone, anyone, to say it was just a joke. That, of course, I had a place at the main table, that I belonged. But no one did. I nodded, bit my lip, walked over, and sat on the cold chair without a word. My view was of a stained wall and a busboy emptying food scraps. Behind me, I heard the clinking of glasses and loud laughter. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay, or if I even wanted a menu. I smiled at the waiter when he passed, ordered sparkling water, and sat there, blinking back tears, pretending the sting in my eyes was just from the smell of bleach and garbage. That night, something shifted in me. I didn't know it yet, but that chair, that exact moment, it wasn't my humiliation. It was the beginning. They say you never forget the way your mother looks at you. And I never have, because my mother didn't look at me with love. She looked at me like I was extra, unnecessary, an inconvenience she had to manage. Growing up, our home was picture perfect on the outside. White picket fence, family portraits on the mantel, birthday parties that looked like they belonged in magazines. But behind those glossy smiles, the truth festered like a wound. My siblings were stars. My older brother, Nathan, was the golden boy, straight A's, football captain, the pride of the family. My younger sister, Ivy, was the little princess, showered in praise, always in new dresses, always getting her way. And me? I was the helper, the one who set the table, cleared the plates, ironed the uniforms, ran the errands. I wasn't asked, I was expected. If I complained, my mom would smile that cruel little smile and say, "Be useful, Ria. You don't have much else going for you, do you?" And if I looked to my dad for help, he'd glance at his newspaper, shift in his chair, and pretend he didn't hear. Silence was a specialty. I remember once I made a handmade birthday card for my mom. I was maybe 7, spent hours coloring it, writing a poem inside, cutting tiny paper hearts to glue around the border. She opened it, looked at it for half a second, and set it aside like it was a receipt. No smile. No thank you. That same night, Ivy gave her a cheap necklace she picked out with Dad's help, and my mom cried like she'd just received a diamond from heaven. I never stopped trying, though. I worked harder in school, hoping someone would notice. I got a part-time job at 16 to buy my own clothes, thinking maybe independence would earn me their respect. But all it did was make me invisible in new ways. "Why aren't you more like Nathan?" she'd ask. "Why can't you be graceful like Ivy?" It wasn't just favoritism. It was a slow, constant chipping away, until I stopped asking for love and started measuring my worth by how much I could endure. So, when she pointed to that chair by the trash can, it didn't shock me. It just confirmed what I had always suspected. I had never really been part of the table. I moved at the moment I turned 18. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tears at the door. Just me, a duffel bag, and a quiet exit no one tried to stop. My mother didn't ask where I was going. My father didn't offer money or even advice. Nathan and Ivy didn't notice. I doubt they even looked up from their phones. I wasn't running away. I was setting myself free. even if it meant walking straight into the unknown. Those first few years were brutal. I worked at a gas station during the day, waited tables at night, and studied in between. There were weeks I lived on instant noodles and coffee. I shared a one-room apartment with peeling paint and no heating. Winters felt like punishment, but I kept going, because what I lacked in support, I made up for in grit. College was a dream I didn't know I could afford, but I applied anyway, took student loans, applied for every scholarship. I'd study late into the night, sleep 3 hours, then head to my shift. I missed out on parties, holidays, and birthdays, but I never let myself fall behind. Every test I passed, every class I aced, felt like a secret victory, like I was building something for myself, quietly, invisibly. And still, through all of it, I kept calling home. On birthdays, I sent cards. On holidays, I mailed gifts, small ones but thoughtful. I called on Mother's Day and left voicemails when no one picked up. I texted updates when I got my associate degree, then my bachelor's. No replies, no congratulations, just silence. But I didn't stop, because somewhere inside me, that little girl still hoped for her mother's approval. Still believed one day they'd look at me and see more than the helper, the errand girl, the ghost in family photos. I didn't need them to applaud my struggle. I just wanted them to see it, to say, "We're proud of you, Ria." But that day never came. So I learned to clap for myself, quietly in my own space. I framed my diploma, stuck it on a wall in my tiny apartment, and whispered, "You did it." Then I went back to work, because while they forgot me, I never forgot them. That's the thing about love. It doesn't always fade just because it's not returned. But it does start to change. I sat there in that wobbly fold-out chair by the trash can, trying to pretend I didn't feel like garbage myself. The restaurant was expensive, crystal glasses, white linen napkins, silverware that didn't match my budget or my outfit. I had chosen a simple dress, not designer but elegant. Still, the moment I walked in, my sister Ivy glanced me over and said, "Did you get that from a thrift store clearance rack?" The others chuckled. Even my mother didn't defend me. She just sipped her wine and said, "Well, at least you made the effort." I bit my tongue. I had brought them small gifts, souvenirs from a business trip I'd taken to Chicago, where I'd closed my first major deal. A little leather wallet for Dad, a perfume for Mom, and custom keychains for Nathan and Ivy. Not expensive, but thoughtful. Personal. When I handed them out, they barely glanced at them. Nathan held his up and said, "Do I look like I need a keychain?" before tossing it back onto the table like it was a used napkin. Ivy didn't even open hers. My father left the wallet in the booth when he went to the restroom. My mother rolled her eyes and muttered, "Trying too hard, as usual." Still, I smiled. I tried joining their conversations. Asked about Ivy's wedding plans, Nathan's new condo, my parents' vacation. They answered, sure, but like they were talking to a stranger, a distant relative they barely remembered. No follow-up questions, no warmth. Then Ivy asked what I was doing these days. I perked up, heart hopeful. "I've been working in real estate," I said. "Actually, I just launched a small property firm." "That's nice," Mom cut in. "But it must be exhausting doing it all on your own. Some people are just built to settle for less." The table laughed. I nodded, pretending it didn't sting. Pretending I hadn't built something from absolute nothing. Pretending I wasn't wearing shoes I bought with my own money after pulling 14-hour days to keep my clients happy. Pretending their laughter didn't sound exactly like it had when I was 13 and spilled juice on Ivy's dress. And they all called me clumsy, useless, embarrassing. I just sipped my water and looked down at my napkin, trying to blink away the sting behind my eyes. They didn't see me. Not really. And I was starting to realize they never had. The laughter simmered as dessert was cleared. Empty wine bottles stood like trophies across the table, testaments to their indulgence. The waiter returned with a polished smile and handed over the bill, presented in a sleek black leather folder. My mother didn't even hesitate. "She's paying," she said, her voice light but sharp, her manicured nail pointing directly at me. "Didn't you say you've got money now?" The words felt like a slap, sugar-coated but still bruising. The entire table turned to look at me. I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. "I what?" Nathan chuckled, stretching back in his chair. "Come on, Ria. Big shot real estate mogul, right?" I glanced at the bill and my heart jumped. $4,600. They had ordered steaks, seafood towers, endless bottles of wine, custom desserts, the works. I hadn't touched half the items on the table. I had been too busy trying to keep up with the conversation, too busy swallowing pride. I looked at my father. He didn't meet my eyes. He just adjusted his glasses, as if this wasn't his problem. Ivy was texting under the table. My mother sipped what had to be her fourth glass of wine and offered me a smile that wasn't really a smile. "What's wrong?" she asked. "You said you were doing fine." Yes, I had said that because I was doing fine, but not $4,600 on people who don't respect me fine. Still, I felt the familiar tug in my chest, the compulsion to be enough, to prove something, to finally be considered worthy. I'd been chasing that since I was old enough to notice the difference in tone when they talked to me versus my siblings. I took a breath, then another, and then I looked at the waiter and smiled. "That's not my table." The waiter blinked. "Sorry." I leaned forward just slightly, my voice calm, almost gentle. "This isn't my table," I repeated. "I'm not with them." The table fell silent. My mother's jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" "I wasn't invited," I said, pushing my chair back. I wasn't welcomed. I was humiliated, insulted, ignored. "So, no, I won't pay for this dinner, because it's not mine. None of this is mine." I stood, smoothing down my dress. Nathan scoffed. "Wow, dramatic much?" I didn't even look at him. The waiter looked from me to the others, unsure. "They'll split it," I said softly. "I'm sure they can afford it. After all, they're family." Then I turned and walked away, heels clicking against the marble floor, my heart racing. Not with shame this time, but with something I hadn't felt around them in a long time. Freedom. For once, I hadn't begged to be accepted. I hadn't played the part. I had simply walked away, and that somehow felt richer than any bank account balance I'd ever earned. I stood still for a moment, letting the silence settle like a storm cloud over the linen-draped table. Their faces were frozen, forks mid-air, mouths slightly open. The tension was thick enough to cut with the steak knives they had so lavishly used. "I'm not family," I said, my voice steady, even soft. "Remember? That's not my table." No one moved. I gave the waiter a polite nod and turned away. My heels clicked with certainty this time. I didn't flinch. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard a shuffle. My mother hissed something under her breath. My sister gasped. My brother cursed. But I was already walking out, past the chandeliers, past the wine display, past the reflection of the girl who'd always been left out. Not anymore. As I reached the hostess stand, the waiter jogged up beside me, a separate bill in hand. I smiled and took it. "Thank you for separating it ahead of time," I said, pulling my card from a sleek clutch. I knew how tonight would go. He nodded almost too kindly. "You don't deserve that." I shrugged. They've been rehearsing that act for years. I tipped generously, enough to make his eyes widen. "Split the rest evenly," I said, motioning to the chaos I'd left behind. "They're family, after all." As I stepped outside, the crisp air hit my skin. It felt like the first deep breath after years underwater. I didn't cry. I didn't second guess. Inside, I could imagine the scramble, the confused calls for the waiter, the arguments, the way my mother would twist it all later to make herself the victim. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Not my seat. Not my laughter. Not my debt. Not my table. I walked to my car, unlocked the door, and for the first time in years, felt entirely in control of the story they once wrote me out of. And, oh, I wasn't done yet. Exactly 1 week later, my phone rang. I stared at the screen. Arjun. My brother. I let it ring. Then again, this time it was Mom. Then my sister. Then Dad, who hadn't called me in over a year, and even then it was just to ask if I could pick up dry cleaning while I was in the area. I didn't answer. Not a single one. I was in the middle of something far more important. The glass conference room was buzzing with quiet energy. My legal team sat across from a room full of suited executives, pens in hand. The final draft of the acquisition was in front of me. I flipped through the pages, calm and focused, my signature moments away from closing a deal worth 7 figures. My small but mighty startup one I'd built from scratch between night shifts and student loan payments, was being acquired by a national brand. My platform had taken off. Investors saw the potential. But more than that, I saw myself. Fully. Finally, my phone buzzed again. This time a message popped up. They'd charged our cards, but it wasn't enough. Restaurant filed a report. Said we dined and dashed. Can you call me back? Arjun. I didn't. They thought I'd pick up because I always had. Because I always bailed them out, cleaned up their messes, quietly swallowed the shame they fed me at every gathering. But that Ria? She no longer existed. The truth is, I had anticipated this. When I walked out of that dinner, I left them not just with the bill, but with the weight of their own entitlement. They thought they were punishing me with that fold-out chair. They didn't realize they were handing me the microphone. Another message came in. Mom says you owe us an apology. You embarrassed us in public. What kind of daughter does that? I nearly laughed. Apology? What kind of mother mocks her child and sits her next to garbage? What kind of family laughs at one of their own just because she wore a dress from clearance and not couture? My pen hit the final page. I signed. I smiled. My life, my real one, had just begun. Later that night, I opened my email. Dozens of missed calls. More messages. One even read. We were going to invite you to Mom's anniversary dinner. But maybe next time don't be so sensitive. Sensitive. That's what they always called me when I cried after being excluded. When I left the room to gather myself. When I dared to say that hurt. But I wasn't sensitive anymore. I was successful. And they were just loud. I closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the skyline, and I raised my glass to the silence around me. It was the first time it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. They needed me now, but I was finally too busy needing me. The wind on the rooftop was just perfect, not too cold, just crisp enough to remind me autumn had arrived. Golden string lights danced overhead, and jazz hummed from a live trio in the corner. The skyline stretched behind us, bold and breathtaking. But the best part wasn't the view. It was the table. A long, elegant table covered in white linen, fresh flowers, and gold-trimmed plates. 20 seats, every one of them filled with someone who had seen me, valued me, chosen me. No one here smirked when I spoke. No one laughed at my outfit or asked why I thought I deserved a seat. Because here I belonged. Across from me sat my co-founder, Ava. She raised her glass with a grin to the woman who closed a deal and a door in the same week. Laughter rippled around the table. My mentor, Mr. Kaplan, nudged my elbow. You've always had it in you, kid. Just needed to stop waiting for permission. I nodded, quietly soaking it all in. The warmth, the peace, the absence of judgment. This dinner wasn't loud or overdone. It didn't need to be. It was mine. Every guest was someone who'd walked beside me through the climb. My investor, my roommate turned sister, the barista who offered me free coffee during my broke coding days, and whom I later hired to manage our new office. This wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition. I'd spent years begging for scraps at a table where I was never wanted, where I was placed beside trash, literally and emotionally. Now, I'd built my own table, and there was no fold-out chair in sight. Halfway through dinner, Ava leaned in. Did your family ever call again? I smiled. They did. Wanted to talk things out. Said they were hurt by how I acted. What did you say? I didn't, I replied, lifting my glass. Because you don't owe explanations to people who only love you when you're silent. Everyone nodded. They got it. Because they knew what it meant to rise above without ever stepping down to explain your worth. As dessert arrived, small slices of cardamom cake and handmade truffles. I stood up and tapped my glass. Thank you, I said, voice soft but steady, for seeing me before the world did, for clapping when I won, and for sitting at this table, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. A chorus of cheers followed, glasses raised high. I looked out at the city lights, then back at my people. My real family. That night, I didn't just host a dinner. I reclaimed every version of myself that ever felt small. I rewrote the rules. I sat at the head of a table that didn't just hold food, but history, healing, and a whole new beginning. And in that moment, with the stars above and laughter around me, I knew one thing for sure. I was never the problem. I just outgrew their table.